Welcome to Stories Found. Each week we feature funny stories, plays, and sketches from some of the most talented comedy writers in the world. I'm your host, Ava Love Hanna, a writer and humorist in Austin, Texas. Joining me is my writing partner, audio engineer, and all-around cool guy, Paul Hanna. You're listening to Stories Found. Our featured organization this week is the Catskill Mountain Foundation. The Catskill Mountain Foundation believes that art can transform the lives of those touched by it, and so they aim to combine high-quality performances, artist residencies, and arts education in a multifaceted program. Find out more about the Catskill Mountain Foundation, their programs, and how you can help further their vision at catskillmtn.org. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Stories Found. This week we're featuring the very, very funny 10-minute play, A Great Fall by Christian Missonak. Christian is a New York City-based playwright originally from Chicago, where he was a graduate of Columbia College and the Second City Conservatory. He's had plays produced all over the country, including one of our very favorite theaters, Mad Lab. Christian is hilarious, a fantastic writer, and we're so excited to have him here today. Hi, Christian. Welcome to Stories Found.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're really excited to have you here to talk about your play, A Great Fall, which, as I understand it, is a serious and thoughtful melodrama about enjoying the autumn of one's life, right?
Absolutely. For sure.
No, so I actually did read your script, and it is hilarious. But so without giving too much away, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Yeah. So without kind of spoiling something that I think it's better not to spoil, It's about someone who is in the hospital having suffered an injury that he believes to be due to some sort of municipal malfeasance that he wants to kind of write, have his story told in the press and kind of draw attention to, what's going on. And the press has decided to go a different way with it. And kind of exploits his story in a strange way.
That's actually perfect. That's the perfect description. And now, we obviously love comedies here, but this play it's just really something special. It's a fantastic parody, almost a pastiche even of a well-known children's story. And I love plays that retell familiar stories in expanded or novel ways. So tell me, how did you get this idea?
Yeah, so I think a year or two back, I was doing this a thing with I think it's called the Playground Theater. I think they have branches kind of in New York where I'm based, and then I think in California, Chicago, where every month there's like a pool of writers, and every month there's a different prompt for, submit your little 10-minute play about blank, and then they would choose 6 or so to develop into little plays for that month. So I had been doing that for a while, and the prompt, I feel like if I gave the prompt away, that would also, but it was looking for plays in a very specific genre, very classic time-honored genre. And so for me, that's not something I don't generally write, that specific genre of things. So to try to deconstruct it, I thought about, I'm hardly the kind of the central premise of it's hard to, I'm like speaking in riddles.
It's okay.
Avoid giving it away. But the central premise, like the oddity between the actual details of a certain well-known story and how it's generally perceived I'm certainly not the first one to point that out, but it's always been something that's really delighted me at how strange it is that we all take this one aspect of the story for granted, despite it not in any way, shape, or form being part of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I tried to look at, if this was really something that had happened to somebody with grave consequences, how they would feel about this little editorial addition being put on their story, even without any grain of truth to it.
Well, and I think you did a great job of even bringing it into sort of modern times because that is something with authenticity of storytelling and journalism. And I just think it was a great choice. And you made the choice to hide the main character's identity, which is why we're sort of talking around this a little bit, at the beginning of the play. Now, did you go into the script knowing you wanted that to be unknown at first, or did that sort of evolve as you were writing?
I'm not certain I knew right away, but very early on, it struck me as that the moment of realization for the audience, I think, is probably the most fun moment in it. Like the minute, it's probably only a page or two into the play before you know what's going on. But I try to really couch it in the realism of the situation. The writers are from the New Yorker. It seems like a real, and then that once that switch is flicked, where you go, oh, that's what this is. I think to not have that be part of it would really kind of take the wind out of it.
Right, and I think even on a reread, it was funny knowing what was happening. But that first time, because I didn't even really look at the cover page. I just like to sort of get into them when I'm doing my first reads, and I'm not normally a fan of gimmicks or like little things that try to trick the reader. But oh my goodness, it was a great instinct to go there, and it just adds another dimension to the humor. So definitely it was. I think it was a great instinct. So talking about some of your other work, like who are some of your writing influences? And I know that's kind of a hard question. Whenever we ask, I'm like, I don't know. So is there anyone off the top of your head that you can think of that really does influence the way you write?
Yeah, I do have one. It doesn't really greatly kind of connect with this specific play, but maybe a little bit. I know for me, especially I've always sort of, being a writer is something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid, but I only kind of gravitated towards screenwriting and playwriting because of my affinity for dialogue and the kind of the pattern of conversation. And so for me, as a kid growing up watching like The West Wing and things like that Aaron Sorkin kind of pitter patter of back and forth was what I was really drawn to. There's a musicality to it that I find really appealing. I don't always need it to be about such high-minded things as like the running of the country. Maybe maybe you can take that same sophisticated conversation and make it about something really stupid and small.
And you can see that now that you've said that influence. When I go back and I'm thinking of the dialogue, it's there there is that musicality in it, and the contrast of the sort of characters' moods, where you've got this sort of deadpan versus the obtuse, kind of journalist. It's there, and that's so amazing. That's amazing to hear that. Do you primarily write comedies, or do you write more serious work?
I generally write more. It's interesting because I've kind of gone through a journey. I'm from Chicago originally, and so I went through the whole Second City Conservatory program. I did sketch comedy and improv at IO, Improv Olympic. So I do have that background, and I was always kind of, as a kid, kind of a class clown type person, but more and more as I entered my 20s, I was really more drawn to more dramatic works. And what I like best is when you're able to infuse the comedy into situations that are not otherwise strictly comedies. I find real life, even the most tragic, the hardest days of my life, there are still moments of levity. There's still moments where you're going to crack a joke. And I think that's that kind of blending. And you see that a lot. I think there used to be, historically, even maybe 15, 20 years ago, there were very firm comedies and very firm dramas, both in terms of plays, in terms of movies, in terms of TV. And I think that line has blurred, where there's not as many strict comedies right now. I've read a lot of, think pieces on the death of the comedy in film, and how things like Marvel making, having humor and stuff has kind of removed comedies from being their own specific genre. But at the same time, I do think you're seeing comedy now being a more important part of really all stories that are being told. And I think that's probably, yeah, I think that's maybe a net good, but yeah, that's sort
Yeah.
of, I think there's room for both in every piece.
Definitely. And I think that comedies that do have a sort of serious element to them, where even though we're talking in, different language about it, we're talking about the same thing as in dramas. And yeah, it's just another way to approach it. I love comedies that have heart, and I love dramas that have some some let up, some lighter moments to let us get through that, some comic
Absolutely.
relief. So wonderful. I love hearing that that's what you're doing. Do you have any projects going on? Anything you want to talk to us about?
Yeah. Well, nothing that's going up imminently, but right now, my wife and I are actually working on a variety of screenplays and things. One
Oh,
is filming
wonderful.
in February, I want to say February, March.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's something that's exciting to, collaborate with, somebody that I'm collaborating on my entire life with is really exciting. And I actually want to thank her for, she was the one who found this, found you guys
Oh,
and
wonderful. Well, tell her thank you, because
yeah,
we
so
love the script. I have to tell you, and I've already told you before, but yeah, it's the kind of script we dream of producing. And I mean, the pacing is perfect, the humor is perfect, but really, when I insisted that we read it out loud when we were doing our final selections, it's something we like to do. And when we got to the part about the horse, we all had to stop because we
that's my
could not
favorite part.
breathe. And it was like my second or third read, and it still got me again. And I'm like, oh my God. So I can't wait for everyone to hear it. It is fantastic. And that's not really a question, but a statement. But man, good job.
Thank you very much.
So,
I particularly like that part.
yeah, it is perfect. And it's one of those where, I'm a comedy writer and I sit there and go, damn it, I almost hate him for how funny that is. So fantastic. I'm sort of envious of this joke. Okay, so final question, and perhaps the most important. What are some tips to have a really great fall?
Oh wow. It's okay. So I mean, if we're talking autumn, I think, get real pumpkiny about it. Really embrace the oranges and the reds and things like
Hmm.
that. If you can go up to New England for some leaf peeping, I
Ah.
highly recommend it. I was in Maine 2 autumns ago. It was lovely. But really just, put on a comfy jacket, walk outside. If you can like roll around in some leaves with a big dog, do so.
These are all fantastic tips. I'm in Austin, so our leaves don't change colors and we don't really
Okay.
wear jackets. But that sounds like I'm going to have to take a trip up north and enjoy a really great fall.
I encourage
So
you to.
wonderful. Well, thanks so much for chatting with us today, Christian. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We know you love Stories Found, but have you ever sat and wondered, wow, how can I let other people know just how much I love Stories Found? Fortunately, we're here to help. Head over to storiesfound.com/support. We've got a list of fun, free, or even paid ways to show your support and to help us keep paying our amazingly talented writers and actors. Soon, the whole world will know just how much you love comedy and supporting the arts. Head over to storiesfound.com/support. Stories Found is now proud to present A Great Fall by Christian Missonak.
Dr. Bethune, dial the operator. Dr. Bethune, dial the operator. Dr. Sod, dial the operator, please. Dr. Sod, dial the operator.
Knock, knock. How are we doing today, HD?
Still injured beyond all hope of recovery, Nathan. Thank you for asking. Come in.
Of course. The doctors told me you're still resting, so we'll try not to take up too much of your time. We brought you a balloon.
Thanks. I can't really do anything with that.
Of course, of course. I'll just let it float up to the ceiling then. How about that? I see you got the early copy of next week's issue.
I did. Thanks for sending that over.
Of course, of course, of course. So this is Alana Fairbanks. She was the illustrator for the piece.
Hi, so nice to meet you.
I know you mentioned on the phone you had some questions about the illustration.
I did, and we'll get to those in a second. So my first thought, though, is that, Instead of being the long form news article that I thought, I was being interviewed for, it's a poem.
Of course, of course, of course, of course.
Because you see, when you called me up and said, I'm Nathan Rubin of the New Yorker, and I want to do a story on your accident, and then you interviewed me for several hours, and you talked to the doctors and the witnesses, and then interviewed my family and basically everyone I've ever known on deep background. I guess, I assumed it was going to be an actual article and include some of the stuff we talked about.
Right. So, see, the New Yorker actually tells a variety of stories, including poems. When I started out, I thought it was going to be a news article, but somehow, I don't know, it just sort of became a poem.
Just accidentally?
Kind of.
Okay. Well, I don't like any of that, but we can stick a pin in it for now. Let's talk about the poem. If you'll indulge me, I'm going to read it out loud and then we'll talk about it. Is that okay?
I, for one, love hearing it.
Great.
Oh, are you sure you should be?
It's fine. It's fine. Okay. A Great Fall by Nathan Rubin. Here we go. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. The end.
Oh, wow. It's like every time I listen to it, I get something brand new out of it.
It's interesting you say that, Miss Fairbanks, was it? Because my first question is actually for you about the illustration you drew to accompany the poem.
Please.
So, to recap, the text of the poem, which was rather short, told us the following. I sat on a wall, I fell, nobody could fix me.
Right.
Can you please tell me which part of that poem, and I still can't believe it's a poem, but which part of that poem states or even vaguely implies that I am an egg? For you see, Miss Fairbanks, the drawing you've done is that of a large cracked egg on the ground, wearing jaunty clothing with kind of like a sad human face. And then there's soldiers and horses standing around just kind of shrugging.
Right. So, you see, the drawing is meant to be representational.
I mean, sure, it's a drawing. All drawings are representational. If you draw a picture of a dog, you're representing a dog.
Oh, okay, so you get it.
I think, and forgive me for speaking for you, Alana.
Please.
I think the thinking here was, wouldn't it be funny, if instead of a person, you were, an egg?
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. Instead of a crumpled human body, we see an egg. And instead of a lot of blood, we see a lot of, yolk.
I don't understand. What's the joke exactly?
Just, just like eggs.
Guys, this was a serious injury that I received as a result of this kingdom's total disregard for its infrastructure. You don't touch on any of that.
I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Dumpty. There wasn't a lot of interest in the poem without you being depicted as an egg person.
He's right. Originally, I drew a very tasteful charcoal sketch of your face to go with the poem, and our editors were like, what's this trash? But then I swapped out the charcoal sketch for the Eggman drawing, and honestly, he started crying.
We all did.
Well, maybe there would have been more interest in the beginning if you just written this as a goddamn article like you told me you were.
Look, Mr. Dumpty, with all due respect, I'm a professional. You wouldn't want to see me coming over to your wall and telling you what to do up there, would you?
That said, we do have one piece of advice about that for next time.
Look, that wall is bullshit, okay? Ask anyone. I was being perfectly safe up there. I noticed you didn't include that in your poem either. That thing is dangerous, and people need to know about that.
Of course, of course, of course, of course. Of course. Was there anything else?
Yes. So, Nathan, you might remember that I was knocked unconscious as soon as I fell and didn't wake up until several days later here in the hospital.
Right. That was in the notes I didn't use.
Dynamite. So obviously, I have no memory of the exact details of the care I received. But you said you spoke with the people on the scene and the doctors and everyone?
Correct.
Do you mind telling me the exact role that the king's horses played in my recovery?
I'm sorry?
You said all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Were the king's fucking horses heavily involved in attempting to put me back together? Because you could see where that would be a job that they're deeply unqualified for.
Of course, of course.
Stop that. What the fuck were these horses up to? I'm not even going to touch on the king's men who, based on your drawing, appear not to be paramedics, but rather child's toy soldiers.
So listen, we preface this by saying that we weren't actually there at the time, so there's no way to definitely confirm this.
Right, but we can't imagine that the horses played a large role.
I mean, the hooves alone.
Right. The hooves would make it a very difficult endeavor for the horses. You're absolutely right about that.
Also, they're animals.
That's another good point.
Mm-hmm.
Our understanding is that the horses were indeed helpful in actually transporting your body to the hospital.
You've got to give them that.
And then, once they were here, just, hanging out at the hospital, it just seemed to make sense to put them to work.
We've been assured they were not performing surgery. We want to make that very clear. It was more of stuff like if the doctor said, scalpel, then the little horse would, sort of trot over to the scalpel, clip, clop, pick it up with its little horse mouth, and then bring it over to the doctor.
And horses, are very fast. So they may very well have saved your life.
But we're not doctors.
Definitely not doctors. Journalists. We cannot stress that enough.
You know what? Screw it. I give up. My life is over and I have nothing to show for it. Fine. Let the world remember me as a fucking egg. Doesn't really matter now.
Humpty, we're really sorry.
Yeah, I didn't know this article meant so much to you. If I had known, I probably would have still gone with the poem because it's genius, but maybe I could have added a second verse or something about the wall being bullshit.
Well, that would have been nice. I was hoping to use the article to get the attention of a good attorney for my lawsuit. My family's finished after this. I mean, look at me. I'll never be able to work again. I'll be lucky if I leave this bed. And with the medical bills, how am I going to take care of my family? How's my wife supposed to put food on the table for the kids?
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you had kids.
I mentioned them a lot during the interview.
Yeah, but I was already working on the poem in my head.
Well, I've got 10. It's a lot of mouths to feed.
So with you and your wife, that makes a dozen of you?
Listen, maybe there's a way to make it up to you. There might be a story in this. A poor woman left destitute by her husband's accident, unable to feed her 10 children. That's something. Readers could be into that. Maybe that could help?
Really? I mean, that would be great. Thank you so much.
It's the least we could do.
Question. What if instead of a house, your wife lived in like a big ass shoe?
You've just heard A Great Fall by Christian Missonak. It was performed for you today by Joe Llorens as HD, Manuel Solis-Bauza as Nathan, and Liz Bernstein as Alana. This episode was lovingly crafted for you by Paul Hanna and ELA Studios. If you'd like to read more of Christian's work, you can find his plays on NPX, the New Play Exchange. We'll have a post on our website with more information about Christian, as well as links to his website and social media pages. You can find all of that on storiesfound.com. Thanks for listening to Stories Found. We've been your hosts, Ava Love Hanna and Paul Hanna. Get more info about this week's episode, subscribe to our newsletter, or submit your own story and be a featured storyteller in a future episode. You can do all that and more on our website, storiesfound.com. Stories Found was recorded at ELA Studios deep in the heart of Austin, Texas.